I'm watching you, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. It's very Stephen King when it wants to be.
Welcome to the Active Marketer Podcast, where we talk about how to design, automate, and scale your business to the next level using sales and marketing automation. You can find out all the tips, tactics, and techniques you need to get more customers and sell more stuff over at theactivemarketer.com. Now, here's your host, Barry Moore.
Welcome to episode 74 of the Active Marketer Podcast. I'm your host, Barry Moore, and this is the podcast that's all about sales funnels and marketing automation. One of the issues that comes up a lot when I'm talking with consulting clients or academy members, and we're talking about building out funnels, and we're talking about building out autoresponder sequences and writing emails to warm people up or to upsell to a certain product or service. Invariably, what comes up is the question, what do I write? I don't know what to write. So a lot of people seem intimidated by the thought of sitting down and writing some emails to people. They kind of freeze up, looking at that blank screen going, oh, what do I say here? What do I say here? So my advice usually is, what would you say to a potential prospect if you were sitting across from them in a coffee shop? Don't talk in marketing speak. Don't talk in hyperbole. Talk to them like a normal person. But still, people seem to find trouble finding their voice and finding a brand or building a brand around who they are as opposed to who the business is. So I thought I would get someone who's really great at it to come on the show and talk about how to find your voice and how to build a personal brand, and that is Mr. Chris Ducker. But before we get into that, of course, the shameless social proof. Man, I can just never say that. I'm going to have to rename that. The shameless social proof segment, where I read out your iTunes reviews or your podcast reviews. And this one comes from the Australian iTunes store. 5 stars. Fantastic. It's by Andrew Barrett. And Andrew says, Barry, you are smashing out some great value in this podcast. I'm relatively new to automation, and having recently moved over to AC, I'm getting a ton of help. Cheers. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. Thanks so much for taking the time to leave a review on iTunes. And if you would leave a review for us on iTunes or Stitcher, I'll be happy to read it out on one of the future episodes. But for now, let's get into this week's episode on finding your voice and building your brand with Mr. Chris Ducker. Welcome to the show, Mr. Chris Ducker, Esquire. How are you, sir?
I'm very Esquire. I love that. That's never been done. I'm very good, sir. Thank you for having me.
And I understand you're going back to the UK soon for a bit of a visit. I
am just going to, go over,
nice.
Eat some fish and chips and drink some proper tea, that kind of stuff.
Lovely. I was hoping that you, sir, could share with some of the audience, some of the folks that I work with. We're building out their sales funnels and their autoresponder sequences, the introduction sequences and sales sequences, and they always seem to come unstuck when it comes to writing those emails, the content for those emails. So it's it becomes, I don't know what to say here. And they seem to have a lot of trouble finding their own voice. So I know you're really great about creating a brand around yourself and helping people do that through your Upreneur program. So I was hoping you could help some of the listeners, help them find their voice and help them kind of define who they are as a brand. So I'm super interested in your journey in that area. Like I know you originally, I guess, kind of came onto the internet scene, quote unquote. With Virtual Staff Finder and your book, Virtual Freedom, which is great, by the way.
Thank you.
But I guess my question would be, what was the impetus to go from, you had success around that and in being, the Virtual Staff Finder guy. What was the impetus to go from that to, the chrisducker.com brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, very honestly, the chrisducker.com brand was around a long time before the Virtual Freedom book. I've been blogging and podcasting since 2010. The book came out middle of 2014. I got the book deal with the traditional publisher because of the Chris Ducker brand. Right. The way that traditional publishers, and we're not going to turn this into a how to market a book, conversation, but the way that traditional publishers work is that they go after people that have established, good-sized followings. They're not buying you or your book. They're buying all the people that are going to buy the book that are already buying you, right? Okay. So, I probably would not have got that traditional publishing deal, as would a lot of other authors as well, if I didn't have the following that I had based around my personal brand already. And that's why you go live and you sell, 8,000 books in 1 week. It is what it is. So I think what's happened with my brand over time is that it's pivoted. And this is one of the beautiful things about building a personal brand based business, because when you build the business around you and what you stand for and what you're all about, as and when your passions and your kind of wants and needs and desires change from a business perspective, your audience can make that change with you, or they can end up obviously not wanting to follow you anymore, and that's absolutely fine as well. But I mean, if you go to chrisducker.com and you search through the blog archives, there's over 600 blog and podcast posts on there. You'll see everything from, virtual assistant, outsourcing, delegation type content. You'll see lots of productivity stuff, because I'm a bit of a productivity, hacker. I want to try and get the most out of my days. You'll also find, a lot of information in regards to building a business based around your personal brand and your experiences and how to cash in on that experience. And you'll find a lot of other thought leader type stuff, why entrepreneurs should stop avoiding the word fear. Why we should be more professional in our entrepreneurship and all this other sort of stuff. So I think the personal brand really lends itself to you as the entrepreneur and as the voice, and you can pivot and change as you want to move into the future. And you can't do that as easily. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you can't do that as easily when you're a brand-based business. But with a personal brand-based business, it's a lot easier to be a little flexible.
Yeah, I guess the crux of my question was, it seemed like there was a point in time where, while the Chris Drucker brand kind of existed, it wasn't the forefront brand. Virtual Staff Finder was the forefront brand, I think. Anyway. Yeah. And then,
and Virtual Staff Finder, is still a business. It's still,
sure.
Making a lot of money every year, and it's still something I talk about, and I'm still the all-out owner. I have no partners in it, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, it was a very deliberate pivot from my end, because to be honest with you, I wrote Virtual Freedom. It's 65,000 words on delegation to virtual staff and building virtual teams. I have been interviewed over 200 times on the subject of virtual staffing and outsourcing. I have keynoted stages all around the world on that very topic since 2010. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of tired.
Fair enough. I was gonna ask you that. I'm like, are you just flat out sick of talking about it?
I don't think I'm sick of talking about it. I think I'm just tired. And there's a difference between the two, right? It's not like I don't enjoy the idea of helping people leverage their time by outsourcing and delegation. I do. I absolutely thrive on that, because I know when you've got the right help around you, you can, grow and support and build your business a lot faster. And I'm still a big advocate of delegation and outsourcing and all the rest of it. But I just honestly got tired. There's only so much you can say about one topic. Yeah. And this whole time, the personal brand of me was developing and was picking up speed and was, getting stronger. And so I started to get people come to me and say, hey, how do I do that? How do I build, market, and monetize my brand, my experience? And that's kind of the area that I've now pivoted into, and I'm loving it. It's a lot of excitement, a lot of passion based people to work with, and obviously with the Upreneur community, I'm in there every day with everyone talking up a storm, and it's just been an incredible last couple of years.
So that transition where chrisducker.com came to the forefront, what was the mental? Was there a point where it was just the mental flip of the switch where you're like, right, I'm going to put, 90% into this and 10% into that? When one eclipsed the other, was that? I know it was a deliberate strategy, but was there like a mental flip at like, right, this is what I'm doing now, bang?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I remember I was in San Francisco. I was in a great little tea house with my buddy Corbett Barr. Yeah. And Corbett at the time we're talking 2012, right? So it's a few years ago now. But Corbett at the time was making quite a name for himself in the online business world as a coach for brand-based bloggers, particularly on helping bloggers find their voice, figure out who their audience was, et cetera, et cetera. And I had gotten to know Corbett just as a friend through, meeting up with him at conferences and mutual friends and things like that. And we were sitting there having a tea and we were talking about things, and he was asking me questions about what I wanted to do in the future, how I was going to build the blog. And to be honest with you, I couldn't answer the guy. I just couldn't answer him. I just didn't have the answers to the questions that he was asking. And he kind of sat back and said, "You're not happy, are you? You're not happy doing what you're doing?" And I said, "No, not really, to be honest with you. I'm doing it because people want it from me, and they're eager, and I like the idea of having a tribe and a community. But I'm not. I wouldn't say I was happy doing it." And he said, "Well, I'm telling you now, if you don't turn that around, you're going to burn out, and it's going to be horrible." And we actually worked together on and off for a couple of months, and he really, really helped me, clarify where I wanted to take my personal brand moving forward. So I owe a lot for the overall success of my personal brand to Corbett, because it was that afternoon and a few Skype calls after that really kind of helped me get my crap together when it came to that side of things.
In that process of solidifying your personal brand, so to speak, what did that feel like? Was it a struggle? It's like, wow, this is harder than I thought it was going to be, or was it just kind of a natural extension of what you'd been doing already?
I think it was a natural extension. When I first got active online, I was blogging and podcasting and video blogging as well over at virtualbusinesslifestyle.com under that brand and that name across the board. But when people talked about my blog or my podcast, they wouldn't call it Virtual Business Lifestyle. They would just call it Chris Ducker's blog or Chris Ducker's podcast.
Of course.
And so, the brand was already developing slowly anyway. And once I made that mental shift, it was a relatively easy move to make, except for the web design side of things. That was where I really struggled actually at first to kind of find my visual brand. What colors? What was the logo going to look like? What fonts was I going to use? Et cetera, et cetera. But we put together a great first chrisducker.com website, and it served me really, really well for 3 years almost. And we updated a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when that came out, and it's not dramatically different now, but it certainly was. It was unique. It stood out. It was like, yep, no, that's Chris Ducker.
Oh, dude, my designer had a ton of people going to him saying, "I want to start like Chris's." So yeah. I know I did something the first time round. Yeah. And we still get that now actually with the current website, even though I kind of feel like the current site does need a little bit of a renovation. It's a little dated looking now compared to some of the other personal brand sites out there. But hey, we do everything one thing at a time, right?
So that transition, what did you find the most difficult in that? Was it defining that look and feel that was going to be Chris Ducker, or was it, more esoteric than that?
No, the one thing that I promised myself when I made that decision to go all out on the personal brand business side of things, I said to myself, I'm going to be me all the time. That was the most important thing. No smoke and mirrors, no hiding behind curtains. And I think by doing that and making that clear decision, it allowed me to really, I don't want to use like management speak on it, that blue sky approach to, think outside the box and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it really, it allowed me to really just do me. You know what I mean? Just be me. And I think people want to do business with other people nowadays. They don't want to do business with brands or smokes and mirrors and curtains. They're not interested in that. Yeah. And so I think people appreciated it. And I get messages all the time from people saying that they appreciate the transparency and that I share a little bit of my personal life, on live video. They can see a little bit, behind the scenes, so to speak. And, quite regularly I'll pop open Periscope as I'm working. And people will just sit and watch me work and ask questions. And I'll just, for 20 minutes here and there. And people appreciate it. It sounds a little kooky, but, people appreciate that stuff. They want to see the real you nowadays. That's part of the personal part of personal brand,
I'm watching you, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. It's very Stephen King when it wants to be.
I forgot, I lost my train of thought there.
But it was a good ad lib, Barry.
No, thank you, sir. But so I think it is. Maybe it's just the circles that we both travel in. But I think online especially has become there's a niche for everything, and it's kind of almost become like the personality economy, right?
Right.
It's like I can buy product A anywhere from anyone these days. So why should I buy from you? Because I resonate with you, and I'm like you, or I like what you're doing, or whatever. So I think if you're missing that component to a reasonably sized online business, you're missing out. Like I was consulting with this really great company here in Australia, and they send out like organic fruit and veg boxes to people, and they're like, how can we get more? I'm like, well, you need someone to lead the tribe. There's a ton of people who love what you're doing, but you haven't given them a flag to rally around. You haven't given them a person to lead that tribe. You need someone in the company to step up and be that personality, that brand, so that people can identify it's more than just a box that shows up. It's a whole socioeconomic system that you guys are putting the money back into the local community. You're doing organic farming. Yeah, so I think personality plays a huge, huge part of it. Now, you see so many people in the Upreneur community that you've got starting out on this. And I see a lot of people, as I said at the beginning, trying to craft their copy, so to speak, who find it so difficult to speak in their own voice. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think what happens is when people are starting out, they do what they should do, and that is they hop on other people's mailing lists to see what they're up to see how they're doing things, to see how they're launching and engaging and all the rest of it. And then what happens is they just end up copying them. Which is, it's fine to emulate. It's fine to get inspiration and ideas, but all-out copying is not going to get you anywhere anytime soon. And so I think the most important thing is when you get started writing email copy, website copy, landing page copy, sales page copy, anything above and beyond content, right? There's a difference between content and copy, right? So content is blog posts, it's podcast transcriptions, and it's all that sort of stuff. When you talk about copy, sales copy, and I'm no expert here, right? I still hire copywriters myself from time to time.
Oh, for sure.
But, when you know that this is not your strength, you should not try and do it. But you can't hire a copywriter for every single piece of copy that you need written. So unless you're, very, very well off and, you don't mind investing in it, which is fine if that's the case, and go for it. I know I would. If I could afford to, invest, $50,000 every quarter in copywriting, I would absolutely do it. Now, obviously, can I afford it? Yes. Do I want to put 50 grand a quarter there? No. There's other things I could be doing with the money, is I guess what I'm saying. But I think what's important is that you just talk like a human being. Like this is the big thing, is that people try to get too salesy. Just talk, tell stories, be honest. Part of the launch funnel for the Upreneur Academy that we are bang smack in the middle of right now, the second email that got sent out was me just telling the story. And it's a long form email as well. It's a good, probably 600-700 words. So it's quite long for an email. But it's just telling the story of how I made a mistake when I first launched Upreneur, and how the terminology meant that the first launch of the community was not as successful as I wanted it to be. And how we've made changes not only to the terminology that we use, but also to what is actually happening behind the doors so that we can, help the most people and make, affect the most change, with our members. And people have eaten that email up. They've eaten it up. Some people are sneaky. They might get on your list with more than one email address. So even though we'll eliminate current members from our marketing, there's no need for them to get them if they're already in, right? We've actually had emails just literally in the last 24 hours from current members who have already paid and they continue to pay on a regular basis for access. I've actually had emails from people over the last 24 hours saying that was some serious copy. Like I would totally buy if I wasn't already a member. So you're doing something right when your members who are already paying saying, hey, can I pay again? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's what it is. Just tell stories, be yourself and try not to overthink it. I think that's the big thing is people try and overthink these things too much. And by the way, you'll never get it right. Not even a copywriter will get it perfect, but it's just a matter of learning with every launch, with every open rate, with every click-through rate that you can see,
Yeah, a couple of things that back there that I want to loop back to is one, like even if you could afford or chose to use a copywriter for every single piece of copy, you're going to have to train him or her to speak in your voice anyway. So you know what I mean? Like, so it's all congruent with the rest of your brand. So if you don't know what your voice is to start with, it's going to be a very, very difficult process.
Yeah, indeed. And that all comes back to defining who you are, right? What do you want to be known for? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? That self-awareness is very important in that process of defining who you are. What problems can you solve? Who do you want to solve them for? And that's why that's the first week. As part of the Opener Academy, that is right front and center, defining who you are. And it's probably the most important week of that 12-week program. No doubt about it.
Nice. And the other thing from that is like you said, being open and honest and sharing the quote unquote mistakes or failures or setbacks, whatever you want to call it, with everybody as well. Because I think that even makes you more relatable. It's like, right, the great Chris Ducker, he can do that. He doesn't, he knows what he's doing. He doesn't make any mistakes. It's like, oh wait, he makes mistakes. I make mistakes.
You make mistakes every day almost. Yeah, if you're not falling forward, then you're not moving forward. That's the way I look at it. And so I'm more than happy to make mistakes. I am just like anybody else. I get pissed off if it costs me money. But let me tell you something. Never make those mistakes twice. Never. Yeah. So there you go.
For sure. All right. So we kind of talked about why it's important to put a stake in the ground and identify kind of who you are as a brand. So on a high level, what are the first steps involved in that process?
Sorry, just repeat that. You cut out just a little bit.
Sorry. So we kind of talked about the importance of kind of putting your stake in your ground and saying, right, this is me, this is what I stand for, and creating a kind of a brand around, you and what you do. What are kind of the first steps in making that from an idea into a reality?
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So, what it really comes down to, like I said, is focusing in on you and what you believe you are the best at, right? And it's okay to get a little selfish here. It's okay to get a little egotistical here, because without you figuring out who you are, you're not going to be able to continue to kind of build out the strategy of your personal brand business moving forward. So it's all about crafting, first and foremost, your story. What's your backstory? People want to know who you are, what you're all about, and what you've been through. They will, what will happen is at the same exact time, you will attract the people that understand you and what you're all about and get your vibe, right? But at the very same time, just like a magnet, I call this, marketing like a magnet. At the very same time, you will repel the wrong people away, the people that you don't need in your customer book, the people who will ask for refunds on day 29 of your 30-day refund period, the people that will bitch and moan over a $99 product after sucking your brain and your energy for the last 30 days, right? You don't need those people in there. So you create your story, you create that attractive character story that people want to kind of attach themselves to begin with. And what will happen is by doing that, you'll understand what you need to do to be able to build rapport and gain trust, which are the two most important parts of the sales process, to be able to not only remain original in a very crowded space, no matter what industry you're in, it's crowded, right? But more importantly than remaining original, it'll also be to gain that clarity for yourself and for the people that you end up serving in terms of what you are actually all about. So that's the first thing, is to kind of develop your story, develop your backstory, develop that attractive character that you need to be able to build, rapport and gain trust. And then, the next thing is to really get into that self-awareness vibe, right? So you make a couple of lists. What I did when I kind of, went through this many years ago, I got a piece of paper and I just drew a line down the middle of it. And on one side of the line, I put all the things that I knew I was really good at. And then on the other side, I put all the things that I knew I struggled with. And it's funny because in that first column, it filled up really quickly. But that struggle column, it filled up very slowly. And that's a mental block right there, because we don't want to admit that we're not good at certain things, right? Us entrepreneurs, we're wired differently to normal human beings, right? So we believe we're brilliant at everything. But once you understand what you're no good at, once you understand what you do struggle with, it allows you to then focus on the things that you know you're really good at, like flatter yourself. Flatter yourself. Think of all the things that you know you're really, really good at. So that's the second thing I would do. I would make those two lists, right? The flatter list and the struggle list. And then third and finally, in regards to the beginning of this process is, and this is a little morbid, but stick with me here, sit down. And this is a huge exercise that I've done with thousands of people now, but it's a game changer. You have to sit down and you write an obituary for your business. Okay? You've achieved everything you wanted to achieve. How do you want people to remember your business? And that little exercise right there, again, a little morbid, but it's so good. And it really helps you to see where you want to be long term as well. And sometimes you got to do that and then reverse engineer it back,
Yeah, for sure. That's a powerful exercise. I did a similar sort of thing at a workshop once, and it was like we actually went and sat in a cemetery and wrote an obituary and a goodbye letter.
There you go. That's taking it to a whole new level. That one.
Well, we
field trip, everybody, right?
Yeah, it was pretty real, pretty weird. But yeah, and we wrote goodbye letters to all the important people in our life, and it was like, wow, there's a lot of undone shit I need to work on with these people. So it was, it's an amazing exercise if you got the guts to do it, for sure. All right, so we might kind of wrap up with a little kind of common errors. Like you've helped tons of people along this journey. What do you see as the common mistakes or common stumbling blocks that people seem to fall over again and again?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. I mean, I for me, one of the biggest things that I see people trying to do is trying to be too much to too many people. We all know the power of niching down, right? And understanding that it's better to serve a smaller group of people in a more direct manner than it is to try and serve a larger group of people in a very broad manner. Yeah. And it's still the number one mistake that people make. Don't be a social media expert. Be the Facebook ads guy for dentists.
Right.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sure. your entire marketing angle can be so much more powerful when you know exactly who you're talking to and exactly what you're talking about. Don't be the guy that teaches you how to become a better basketball player. Be the guy who's going to teach people how to become a better forward or a better center or a better point guard. Yes, you're instantly eliminating four positions on that core, but by doing so, you can really fine tune your message to those point guards or to those centers. So, for me, it really does come down to niching down. You've got to niche down. It's a big mistake that people make more than anything else.
Right. Yeah, you can always expand out from there. And,
absolutely. And that's the beautiful thing about pivoting. You're in control, right?
And it makes you instantly referable as quote unquote, that guy or that girl, right? It's like, oh, you need this, you need to talk to Chris, right? Or
that's right. And I found that with virtual staff and with outsourcing for many, many years. I still get it now, but there are more people on the scene now than what there was, 4 or 5 years ago when I was focusing in on that properly. But I became the VA and outsourcing guy. And now slowly but surely, I see things, after really 2.5 solid years of focusing on my personal brand, I'm now starting to see that, you need to go to Upreneur, or you need to go to Chris Tucker. Forbes just did a piece on me in terms of personal brand business as well. Nice. So when you see big name, press houses like Forbes picking you up and what you're all about, that you're what you're doing is starting to work. It's starting to work. So it's not something that can happen overnight. And that's where patience and that long game mindset in business comes into play. But I think that as long as you got your head screwed on right, that you've truly done that first exercise and define who you are and who you want to serve, I think it's what it's all about.
Awesome. And we've been mentioning it a little bit here and there, but for the listeners who aren't familiar, you want to tell us a little bit about Upreneur, and personal question, why the relaunch?
Yeah, well, so Upreneur came about as a kind of a direct result of putting on smaller mastermind events when I was traveling around the world speaking. So I've been very blessed to be invited to speak and keynote at some very, very large events, US, Australia, UK, Europe, all over Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and whatnot. And I saw two things that were happening over and over and over again. And it's actually quite obvious, but a lot of people, I don't think, give it the eyeballs and the headspace time to figure it out. First and foremost, entrepreneurs are lonely. They are. We're lonely.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a very, very lonely battle, being an entrepreneur and building your business, particularly an online business where the majority of people working from home, they don't get out much and all the rest of it. So that's the first thing is, the fact that it's a lonely journey. And the second thing that I discovered from doing these smaller masterminds, and this was the big one, was that nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. Nobody. When I used to do these mastermind sessions, 10, 12 people, in the room all day long, by the time we were done, it was an absolute guarantee that someone, in fact, everyone at that table was going to have a huge value bomb dropped on them by somebody else at that table by the end of the day, whether they knew them before that day began or not. And that's just the power of getting together with like-minded people who get it. And so I wanted to develop a community that could give that support and give that accountability and have that get it mentality, but also one focused around serving people that based on the fact that I've now, truly got to the point of deciding who I am and figuring out, that definition of who I am and those I want to serve. I wanted to create that community that was going to serve people that were building brands and businesses around their personal brands. So guys like, coaches, authors, speakers, bloggers, podcasters, experts, consultants, that kind of thing. We launched in 2015. We're now relaunching with a new angle. So it's no longer just a community angle. It's more of a training program with a community angle, because the feedback was that a lot of people like the idea of being part of a community, but they also needed the hand-holding and that step-by-step approach to get started with things. So there's the relaunch strategy behind what you now see at youpreneur.com. But, it's been an interesting journey, Barry, and it's not something that I would have thought that I'd be doing 5 years from now. But now that it's been up and running for a couple of years, I'm very, very happy with, the way it's come together. And obviously I'm pumped for the future of it. I think it's going to continue to grow, and it's true or rather it's very clear to see that we're serving people in the right way. And more importantly, the right people. And that's, I think, what has made the big kind of, change to the growth of it above and beyond everything else.
Awesome. And if you are interested, folks, if you're interested in kind of getting your brand together, you can head over to chrisducker.com. You'll find all the information there. Where else would you find it, right? But chrisducker.com.
It's got to pretty much be on a personal brand.
That's right. That's right.
Domain name.
Well, sir, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and your expertise and your knowledge and your journey. I do appreciate it, and I know the listeners appreciate it as well, and all the safe travels on your trip to the UK.
Dang it, my man. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun. Good chat.
All right, see you online. Wow, great chat there with Mr. Chris Ducker. If you are struggling and you need a bit of help in building your own personal brand, then I would urge you right away to go over and check out youpreneur.com. That's Chris's community where he teaches how to build personal brands from woe to go. And it's only open for a short time. So head over there now. I think it's only open for a couple more weeks before they close it down again. So head over to youpreneur.com. If you don't know how to spell that, I don't blame you, but you can head over to theactivemarketer.com/75, and that link and links to everything else we talked about will be in the show notes. So head over to theactivemarketer.com/75 to get all the good goss, and I will see you next week for another episode. In the meantime, get out there and design, automate, and scale your business to the next level with sales and marketing automation. See you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Active Marketer Podcast. You can find the show notes and all the latest marketing automation news over at theactivemarketer.com.